This morning, opposition to the president's plan to resettle 10,000 Syrian refugees in the U.S. is growing after the Paris attacks. One of the suspected terrorists apparently snuck into France through Greece among the tide of migrants.
We want to keep Mississippi out of that war here on the home front.
Mississippi's Phil Bryant is one of at least 22 governors, mostly Republicans, who say they'll do what they can to keep Syrian refugees out of their states, denying them services usually offered to refugees.
If there's even the slightest risk that people who are coming in from Syria are not the types of people that we would want them to be, then we can't take that chance.
The move drew criticism from some Democratic governors, like Vermont's Peter Shumlin.
And I think that the governors who are taking those actions are stomping on the qualities that make America great.
It's dividing lawmakers on Capitol Hill, too. Arizona Senator John McCain and other Republicans said the refugees should not be allowed in, at least for now.
We have to have a pause until we are absolutely sure that anybody who comes to this country as a refugee has to be properly screened.
Here's how the screening process works. First, the State Department collects biographical information on the applicant. The Department of Homeland Security, the National Counterterrorism Center, and the Pentagon then review it. Next comes an in-person interview with a Homeland Security official, plus a health screening and a cultural reorientation course. Maryland Senator Ben Cardin says he doubts a terrorist would be able to slip through.
No refugee comes to the United States without going through this vetting process. It could take 18 to 24 months.
At a press conference in Turkey, President Obama said the United States has a moral responsibility to take in some of those Syrians fleeing the violence in their country.
The people who are fleeing Syria, they are the most vulnerable as a consequence of civil war and strife. And when I hear folks say that, well, maybe we should just admit the Christians but not the Muslims. When I hear political leaders suggesting that there would be a religious test for which person who's fleeing from a war-torn country is admitted, when some of those folks themselves come from families who benefited from protection when they were fleeing political persecution, that's shameful. That's not American. It's not who we are.
The president has called for increasing the number of Syrian refugees allowed into the United States from 1,600 last year to up to 10,000 this year. But more than 24 governors are now saying the refugees are not welcome in their states.
We don't want to become like Europe, where they let all these refugees in.
We're going to do all within our power, all that's humanly possible to resist these Syrian refugees that are being forced upon us.
Most of the Republican presidential candidates agree.
Anyone with an ounce of common sense would say no. We should be resettling them humanely in Middle Eastern countries that are majority Muslim.
So they go and they fight for ISIS, they come back into our country, and we accept them back. And at some point they won't be going away, they'll be shooting us here.
The Obama administration says there is no reason to fear the Syrian refugees that are coming into the United States, saying that they are some of the most vetted and scrutinized people entering the country. And George, they also point out that more than 3/4 of the Syrian refugees coming here are women and children.
These people are people who've suffered the horrors of war. They're women, they're orphans.
As waves of Syrians fled the region this summer, international aid organizations urged the U.S. to accept no fewer than 65,000 refugees. The White House figure of 10,000 appeared miserly then, but to Republican presidential contenders Ben Carson and Marco Rubio, it looks reckless now.
Bringing people into this country from that area of the world, I think, is a huge mistake.
It's not that we don't want to, it's that we can't, because there's no way to background check someone that's coming from Syria. Who do you call and do a background check on them?
Jeb Bush, who staked out a more welcoming position on refugee resettlement over the summer, now wants to narrow the focus.
And I think our focus ought to be on the Christians who have no place in Syria anymore. They're being beheaded, they're being executed by both sides.
At the CBS Democratic presidential debate, Martin O'Malley stuck with his summer support of 65,000 new refugees.
Accommodating 65,000 refugees in our country today, people of 320 million, is akin to making room for 6.5 more people in a baseball stadium with 32,000.
On the defensive, but staying the course, President Obama responded to the attacks in Paris, determined to keep and expand his plan to defeat ISIS.
There will be an intensification of the strategy that we put forward, but the strategy that we are putting forward is the strategy that ultimately is going to work. But as I said from the start, it's going to take time.
The president responded to critics who insist he's not fighting hard enough to destroy the terrorist army, arguing those detractors are proposing what he's already doing.
Folks want to pop off and have opinions about what they think they would do. Present a specific plan.
But Mr. Obama brushed off calls to pour thousands of U.S. troops into Iraq and Syria, saying that would only repeat past mistakes. The president was visibly annoyed that his strategy was even questioned.
Why can't we take out these bastards?
Well, Jim, I just spent the last 3 questions answering that very question. We can retake territory, and as long as we leave our troops there, we can hold it. But that does not solve the underlying problem of eliminating the dynamics that are producing these kinds of violent extremist groups.
The president also defended the assessment he made just days before the attacks in France that ISIS had been contained, maintaining the terrorist army has lost ground. He denied that he misjudged ISIS from the start, despite once describing the group as the JV team.
There has been an acute awareness on the part of my administration from the start that they would have the capabilities to potentially strike in the West.
I can certainly see with things that are taking shape right now, things that are happening today.
Yes.
We could see how just one little spark can ignite something.
One major thing, bam,
and
we're off the edge.
overnight,
We're off the edge.
Overnight,
wow,
what you knew today no longer exists.
Now, let's talk.
The Islamic State group has released a video showing one of its fighters in Iraq vowing to attack Washington next. The nearly 12-minute video shows fighters praising Friday's attacks in Paris that killed 129 people and injured hundreds more.
Soccer game between Germany and the Netherlands that was evacuated and canceled Tuesday after police said they had concrete evidence of a bomb threat, although no explosives were found. It's more evidence about how much all of Europe is on edge right now. ABC Terry Moran has more on that from Belgium. Good morning, Terry.
Good morning, George. You know, it's an ordinary day here, but there is in this city and in city after city across Europe an undercurrent of dread. It's the nature of those Paris attacks. Ordinary cafes and restaurants, concerts, soccer matches, stuff you'll find in any city. Here in Brussels, there are still raids and arrests every day in this predominantly Muslim neighborhood. That's got everyone on edge. And really, in the back of everyone's mind, even on a day like today, is that question, where are they going to strike next?
Overnight in Germany, police shut down a train station after getting what they called a concrete and serious threat at a nearby concert venue. And at this 49,000-seat soccer stadium, Germany and the Netherlands were set to play. The match was suddenly called off after concern there, too. Football gave way to fear. 90 minutes before kickoff, police vehicles rushed to Hanover Stadium, reports of a suspicious package. Over loudspeakers, thousands of fans were ordered to evacuate. Please remain calm. We want you to go home, police announced. The match was canceled, and the team rushed to a secure location. German Chancellor Angela Merkel, en route to the match, was whisked back to Berlin. Then the whole stadium was searched, dogs and police with assault rifles going seat by seat. Even the surrounding neighborhood was shut down. This morning, a German sports journalist who was at the stadium posted this image on Twitter, police appearing to hold a man at gunpoint. But hours later, officials confirmed no device was found. Hanover was clear, no arrests made.
In the aftermath of Friday's terrorist attacks in Paris, many in Italy fear that a solution to terrorism will not be found in the short term. Italy's Prime Minister Matteo Renzi himself said Monday at a G20 summit in Turkey, terrorism won't go away overnight and that a comprehensive approach is needed. Renzi regarded positively the prospect of bringing Russia back to the negotiating table. However, some political parties have accused Renzi of hypocrisy.
Last week, our Prime Minister Renzi was in Saudi Arabia doing business with those who support ISIL. We should focus more on internal security and withdraw our troops from the Middle East.
We must not forget that Italy has 250 military instructors in Erbil, in Kurdistan, and 110 Carabinieri policemen in Baghdad. Peshmerga and Izadi forces that freed Sinjar a few days ago have also been trained by them.
Italy has further raised its terror alert following Paris massacre, especially in Rome, which is a potential target as the home of the Catholic Church. The Holy Jubilee of Mercy gets underway on December the 8th, and authorities and locals fear terrorist attacks may take place in the Italian capital.
We are in Europe. There are so many nut jobs around. Chances of a terrorist attack are there, even though policemen seem to be everywhere.
In the wake of Friday's terrorist attacks in Paris, France has hinted at temporarily closing the Schengen area. Italy's Foreign Minister Paolo Gentiloni says he hopes Paris won't suspend the open borders instituted under the Schengen Agreement, opting instead for more police checkpoints and collaboration between intelligence services.
Security was tight at the Vatican Wednesday as some 20,000 pilgrims gathered in St. Peter's Square to listen to Pope Francis during the general audience. Italy is currently on a level 2 alert following the attacks in Paris. But despite increased police presence around the Vatican, people say they want to focus on faith, not fear.
We need to do everything we have always done with a greater attention. We need to be vigilant, but life continues. We cannot stop in front of those who create terror.
Military police checked bags and plainclothes officers mingled within the crowd. Pope Francis carried out business as usual. The first event to mark the Jubilee year will be the opening of the Holy Door in St. Peter's Basilica on December 8th, and the pontiff says it must be open to all. Behind the scenes, security forces are on high alert as the Holy Year approaches, working to safeguard the millions of pilgrims expected to arrive at the Vatican.
It's about extra security measures, protection when it comes to sensitive interests and areas where people gather, football stadiums, concert halls. And so it will be done by local police as well as federal police, and in this case, because we are at threat level 3, by the military. At the moment, we have 220 soldiers on the streets of Belgium, and since increasing to a level 3 overnight, we will increase this to 520 soldiers present on the streets of Belgium. Collaboration has been reinforced, even though it was already quite strong. And given Friday's events, we have an exchange of liaison officers, Belgian policemen in France and French police in Belgium, and also the idea to launch a collaborative inquiry to work on the facts.
Harvard University on Monday reopened 4 buildings on its campus that had previously been evacuated. The reason? an unconfirmed bomb threat, but a search of the buildings had turned up no explosives. The buildings then reopened, the university said on its website. A warning was first posted on the Harvard website at 12:31 p.m. local time. University authorities said all 4 buildings had been evacuated and law enforcement officials were on the scene. The bomb threat comes after reports emerged on Monday of a new video by the Islamic State. The extremist group claimed that it planned to, quote, strike America at its center in Washington. But according to CNN, the Federal Bureau of Investigation said in response that, quote, there is no specific or credible threat to the United States. It remained unclear whether the unconfirmed bomb threat received by Harvard was related to the IS video.
The panic in the air. Those Air France jumbo jets from the U.S. to Paris diverted because of bomb threats.
Morning, Robin. One of those jets took off from here, the other from L.A. They were just in the air for a few minutes when the threats came in, and Air France was taking no chances. On the ground in 2 cities, Air France jets surrounded by emergency vehicles. Passengers getting off after those 2 bomb threats.
Air France 065, and are you still dumping fuel?
Both jets making emergency landings shortly after taking off for Paris.
Air France 65, Salt Lake Tower, you're clear to land.
We had made a pretty sharp right-hand turn, and we're only at like 10,000 feet, so we were descending.
That Air France flight had taken off from Los Angeles and diverted to Salt Lake, while the second took off from Washington's Dulles Airport and had to make its emergency landing in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
People on the plane said some of the stewardesses were like in tears crying.
In all, more than 600 passengers taken off the 2 aircraft, which were swept by authorities and K-9 units.
The whole world is on edge after Paris, and so you're going to get these pranksters who want a reaction. Out of an abundance of caution, they're going to land these airplanes and check them out.
Authorities in Canada and the U.S. now working to determine the nature of the threats and tracing that phone call, if they can, which grounded the 2 full international flights. So these were false threats. Both planes were swept. The one in Salt Lake City was able to take off. The one in Nova Scotia has to take off later tonight because of crew rest issues.
French police have led a massive raid in the Paris suburb of Saint-Denis, searching for suspects in Friday's deadly terrorist attacks.
According to Islamic State, this can of Schweppes Gold soft drink contained the explosive that brought down a Russian airliner in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula last month. Dabik, the Islamic State magazine, says, quote, "The divided crusaders of the East and West thought themselves safe in their jets as they cowardly bombarded the Muslims of the Caliphate, and so revenge was exacted upon those who felt safe in the cockpits." The group also published a photo of what it said were passports belonging to Russians killed on the flight. It was not immediately possible to verify the authenticity of the photos published in the online magazine. Islamic State said it had exploited a loophole at Sharm el-Sheikh Airport, where the Airbus 321 originated, in order to smuggle a bomb on board. They claimed they targeted the Russian plane in retaliation for Russian airstrikes in Syria.
We should not apply any time limits. We should know them all by name. We will search for them everywhere, wherever they are hiding. We will find them in any spot of the planet and punish them.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is vowing to hunt down those responsible for blowing up a Russian airliner over Egypt, and he's begun with intensified airstrikes against militants in Syria, using long-range bombers and cruise missiles. The attacks came after the Kremlin concluded that a bomb brought down the Metrojet plane last month, killing all 224 people on board, and just days after the Islamic State assaults on Paris. For the first time, Russian jets were joined by French planes in bombing targets in Syria. During a visit to the Defense Ministry's command center in Moscow Tuesday night, Putin ordered Russia's military to coordinate its activities with France.
Very soon, a French Navy group headed by an aircraft carrier will arrive in your area of operation. You need to establish a direct contact with the French and work with them as with allies.
Russia began airstrikes in Syria at the end of September. A French government source says Russia has attacked the Islamic State stronghold of Raqqa in northern Syria, signaling Moscow is becoming more concerned about the threat posed by IS.
France and Russia may coordinate more of their actions soon, though. The U.S. is currently trying to build a military alliance with both nations. Secretary of State John Kerry is in Paris now. He met with the French president and after that meeting sat down with Scott Pelley. Kerry told CBS News he can foresee U.S. and Russian forces fighting alongside one another to fight Daesh, another name for ISIS.
The basic strategy of destroying Daesh's center, its core, which is what we did with al-Qaeda, is working. And al-Qaeda was diminished as an entity that had the ability to do what it did in 9/11 through the protracted effort in Afghanistan and Pakistan and elsewhere in the Arabian Peninsula. And Daesh sort of filled their void.
We did
that. Now
that.
We have to do it to Daesh.
Well, a new study conducted by the Institute for Economics and Peace finds that global fatalities of terrorist attacks hit a record high last year. The study reveals that the number of people killed in terrorist incidents has risen 80% in 2014. Global Terrorism Index shows that nearly 33,000 people were killed by terrorists in 2014, which is a drastic increase compared to the nearly 18,000 in 2013. The report blames Takfiri groups of Daesh and Nigeria-based Boko Haram for more than half of the deaths. The two terrorist groups have launched attacks in more than 160 countries. Iraq was the worst-hit country with almost 10,000 terrorism-related deaths.
Worldwide terror attacks have killed hundreds and hundreds of victims this year. They've caused bloodshed in several countries, including Kenya, Lebanon, Egypt, and of course, France. Rochelle Kufo explores how a complex illegal business network is sustaining the terror groups such as ISIL.
There were rumors in the intelligence community about the likelihood of an attack ahead of Friday's Paris assault. There were similar warnings in Kenya ahead of April's deadly attack on Garissa University. But without concrete intelligence to act on, disaster followed.
Many people were aware there is a terror threat, but we are wondering why couldn't the government respond?
The intricate network funneling money to support and conceal terrorists makes deciphering rumors from facts a difficult task. Anti-ISIL activist group Raqqa is being slaughtered silently claims ISIL is able to sustain itself through a network within Syria. The group identifies several sources of funding, including energy sales from ISIL-controlled sites, taxes on residents, selling goods and running internet cafes. Money also comes from religious fines for breaking Sharia law, confiscating land and selling a range of products including oil, drugs, cigarettes and antiques on the black market. The U.S. Treasury estimates that ISIL earns around $1 million a day in revenue just from black market oil sales. Now, outside of Syria, U.S. intelligence officials say sources of other revenue like human trafficking, kidnapping ransoms and passport sales add an additional $2 million a day. For around a decade, wealthy donors in Gulf countries have been a consistent source of funding. Tuesday's U.S. congressional briefing on terror financing urged more accountability from governments in Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait.
Wealthy individuals from these countries fund terrorists all over the world, including Al-Qaeda and Al-Shabaab. They set up charities and funnel the money directly to the terrorists. The government of these Gulf countries simply do not do enough to stop the steady stream of terrorist financing.
Another lucrative strategy is robbing banks. With the ISIL raid of an Iraqi bank in 2014, the terror group's wealth is estimated to be in the billions. It's why many in the intelligence community consider ISIL the most well-resourced terror group in history.
Members of the anonymous hacker group, they were promising revenge for the Russian plane disaster. This is what they said.
Hier, vendredi 13 novembre 2015, notre pays, la France, fut attaqué à Paris vers 22 h par de multiples attentats terroristes revendiqués par vous, l'État islamique. Ces attentats ne peuvent pas rester impunis. C'est pourquoi les Anonymous du monde entier vont vous traquer. Oui, vous les vermines qui tuent les pauvres innocents. Oui, nous allons vous traquer. Comme nous avons pu le faire depuis les attentats de Charlie Hebdo. Attendez-vous donc à une réaction massive d'Anonymous. Sachez que nous vous trouverons et que nous ne lâcherons rien. Nous allons lancer l'opération la plus importante jamais réalisée contre vous, attendez-vous à de très nombreuses cyberattaques. La guerre est déclenchée. Préparez-vous. Le peuple français est plus fort que tout, et se relèvera de cette atrocité, encore plus fort, sachez-le. Anonymous présente encore ses condoléances aux familles des victimes. Nous sommes Anonymous, nous sommes Légion, nous ne pardonnons pas, nous n'oublions pas, attendez-vous à nous.
Too weak and dehydrated to stand, this calf is likely to die. Here in South Africa's north, the Molotedi Dam is 95% empty. The grass is dry, sparse, and not rich enough to feed animals. Ranchers find carcasses daily. MacDonald has no choice but to boil them for his dogs.
Because of the drought, this cow ran out of energy, and when it wanted to drink water from the dam, it got stuck in the mud.
South Africa is experiencing its worst drought in 3 decades. In this remote area, a good rainy season hasn't come for years. Many ranchers are selling their livestock, fearing that they'll die.
More than 30 million Americans are facing a severe weather threat this morning. The powerful storm system stretches from the plains to the Midwest. It fueled tornadoes in Kansas and Texas last night. Heavy snow is making the morning commute dangerous in parts of the Rockies.
Oh my God.
A severe weather outbreak spawning a reported 38 tornadoes in 4 states. Here in Texas, 13 reported twisters touching down. 4 of those reports coming after a tornado tore through the town of Pampa in pitch darkness.
Oh my God, we have a gigantic tornado right in front of us. Power lines exploding.
One of those tornadoes reportedly at least a mile wide, leveling a Halliburton plant. Officials saying the tornado caused chemicals at the site to leak. That spill now contained. 21 reported tornadoes touching down in Kansas, pelting drivers with golf ball-sized hail and damaging some homes. The weather tossing this 18-wheeler across slick roads. At least 3 more tornadoes reported in Oklahoma. So far, no injuries or fatalities have been reported. Let's turn now to my friend and colleague Clayton Sandell, who's in the snow in Denver. Good morning, Clayton.
Hey, good morning, Ryan. You can see a lot of snow has fallen here overnight. Some areas have already gotten slammed with about 15 inches, and it's still coming down. But the problem is the wind. 60-mile-an-hour gusts are creating blizzard whiteout conditions. Visibility in many areas is completely down to zero. So a lot of roads and highways across the region are shut down. Many schools are also closed today. And if you happen to be flying, the Denver International Airport says more than 200 flights have already been canceled. Now, the good news is this system is supposed to push through by midday, but that morning commute could be a real mess. Ginger, over to you.
Clayton, as the snow tapers for you, we are going to see the severe weather move to the east. So New Orleans, Shreveport, Hot Springs, Little Rock, all in that elevated risk area, or New Orleans in the slight area. Either way, potential for tornadoes and strong wind.
Japan has helped set up a permanent exhibition at the UN headquarters in Vienna, displaying the world's first and only use of atomic bombs in warfare by the United States.
The artifacts and pictures displayed before us are a stark reminder of the destruction caused by the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki 70 years ago in 1945. They are a testament to the horrendous power of nuclear weapons to kill in an instant, while sending ripples to generations to come.
In 2009, US President Barack Obama outlined his vision for a world free of nuclear weapons, but at the same time said he would not abandon his policy of nuclear deterrence.
The U.S. carries out a third flight test of a newly upgraded nuclear gravity bomb in Nevada's Tonopah test range. The test of the upgraded B-61-12 nuclear gravity bomb was completed by the U.S. Air Force and the National Nuclear Security Administration, NNSA, in October. The NNSA Deputy Administrator says the test was part of his continued commitment to the security of the U.S. and its allies. Madeleine Queden added that the test flight contained representative non-nuclear components, but no highly enriched uranium or plutonium. The first test of the B-61-12 took place in July. The test of a nuclear gravity bomb, which has been in use since the Cold War, was launched following an $8 billion upgrade.
Against the government's hosting of the APEC. It has allotted 10 billion pesos for this hosting, but there's not enough food, not enough jobs for our people. They have hidden the homeless so that the world leaders cannot see.
Wake of the horrors of Paris,
Italien, Deutschland, Ungarn,
calls for an end to Europe's open border system. Below this hillside, the Spielfield Refugee Reception Centre. Please keep the two sides apart. This is a hostile crowd.
There were still people amongst us who supported helping the migrants until one moment. That moment was Paris.
Many Parisians may balk at solidarity with this anti-immigration group. They are a minority, but an increasingly vocal one.